just going through the process of one session really opens up to allow yourself to analyze more situations that happened to you when you're younger. And you're like, oh, I see that now. And then you can just give your younger self some love and listen, we're safe now. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We can move forward,
Good morning. This is Metamorphosis Moments, the interview series. I am your host, Tricia Chandler, RTT therapist and trauma recovery coach. This morning, I am talking with Beth Parrish, and she is an RTT therapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and an equine coach. I think I got that correct.
Oh, certified, not clinical, but yes.
Oh, okay, certified hypnotherapist. And Beth lives just outside of Atlanta, and she works with horseback riding and all sorts of interesting things. So we're going to dive in and just talk about our practices together this morning. And I'm super glad to have you together with me today, Beth. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always fun to meet other RTT therapists. So tell me more about what you do with horses and people.
Well, I started out teaching riding since the year 2000. And so I've been teaching over 24 years now. And I taught in person, and I've had thousands of students. And over the years, I pretty much have noticed a common theme. And riding can be a scary thing, and there can be falls and traumas, and many people will have anxiety for riding. And so I developed some online courses to start out to help face people's fears with riding.
Mm-hmm.
And I started out with that, and it was going really well. I was helping a lot of people. And I even developed some remote groups. So I have clients that will share videos, and I'll give them feedback, and I'll even do remote lessons. I had one particular client who told me she had gone to a regular hypnotherapist and it was starting to help her build her confidence. And that for me was an ear prick up moment. I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about that. And at the time, I had been really into the Mind Valley programs, and I had done one with Marissa Peer. And I'm like scrolling through Facebook like most people do. And there was a little ad saying, do you want to become a certified hypnotherapist? And all of a sudden I went, I think I need this. And sure enough, I went through the program. Took me about 7 months to get certified. I graduated in May 2022. Since then, I've done over 100 sessions online, and I'm focused mostly on building confidence for riding and giving people the tools they need to basically enjoy their riding, enjoy their time with their horses, so they can move past all those anxieties and, still have a healthy dose of fear that shows up, but understand how to deal with it and know that they can get nuanced into making sure they feel safe in all the ways possible. So I've been really, really, really amazed and sometimes surprised by the results that come up. I had one client that was like 8 months since she had been riding because she was terrified to get back on. We did one RTT session. The next day she got on, and she'd been riding ever since and had been having the best time. And she even couldn't believe it. She's like, I have no more fear. This is amazing.
Had
So
something happen that precipitated her to be afraid?
yeah, she had a few falls off of this particular horse.
Mm.
And it was just snowballing to where she just didn't even want to get back on. She was so afraid. And she even had a trainer working with the horse to get it really solid, but she was still too afraid to just go ahead and get back on. So she found me through another friend, and that was amazing. I was so proud of her.
That is amazing. Well, and I think, because horses are so intuitive and they're so skittish and they read your energy so strongly. If you're anxious, then you're more likely to have another fall because the horse senses it and they're going to behave skittishly and,
Yeah, they feel everything. They
Mm-hmm.
feel everything. So
Yeah.
even if you're like, I'm fine, I'm doing great, but inside your body's like, no, I can't do this. The horse is like, you're not being congruent, lady. This does not
You're
feel
acting
right.
happy, but you're freaking me out because there's something else going on and I should be worried. Yeah, that's kind of how they are, right?
Exactly. So you just have to have the tools to learn how to come back to your calm.
Mm.
RTT has that with rewiring your mind and giving you new thoughts to hold on to and literally update yourself. So that way you can become the person that your horse can trust.
Right. I mean, and I've talked to others who use it in other sports as well, and sports performance is hugely beneficial, with RTT. The results are incredible.
Absolutely. And I know that I've also played golf when I was in high school, and I remember every time I'd visualize the shot perfectly, I would have the best time and usually really probably 80 to 90% success.
Mm-hmm.
But if I didn't do it and rush through it or let my ego get involved, I would just flub the shot. So
Yeah,
our minds are
I hear
so
that.
powerful that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hear that from other athletes too. They'll say, if I just put my mind, into this space where I can visualize myself completing this task perfectly, I'm so much more likely to nail it than if I just go up there and attempt to concentrate and, all the noise in my head gets in the way and then I screw it up.
Exactly.
And I hear that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and visualizing is so powerful because you get yourself so focused because our minds always want something to chew on, like a dog with a bone. So if we go, okay, this is what we're focusing on now, mind, and it's like, got it. And then all the other what if scenarios that are negative start to fade away because you're so focused on what do I want in this future and a few strides ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's so true of anything, not just sports. I mean, you're trying to get a promotion at work. You're even trying to find an authentic, loving relationship. I mean, anything. You just put yourself into that mindset. And it's manifesting. So if you put these positive thoughts forward out into the universe and you're basically, this is setting my intention. I'm going to succeed at this. I'm going to be great at this. It's just, and you're putting that out there. It's that energy into the universe. And I know it sounds super, goofy for people that aren't new agey, but that's really how it works. It really works. Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell people there's so much more out there than that we don't know. So why not play with the possibilities? Why not keep yourself open?
Right. And I think if people are religious, they believe in the power of prayer. This really isn't that different of a concept.
Absolutely.
You're putting
however they get there,
however you get there, whatever you call it, it's visualizing, it's meditation, it's mindfulness, it's prayer, it's whatever you call it. Yeah.
It's all about what you believe. As long as you believe in your heart's desires and keep focused on that, then everything else just comes into
it just comes
together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not magic. It's it's just setting your intention and your focus onto a desired result, and then you're so much more likely to attain that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I think it's super cool. I love hearing these stories. Anytime I hear them, I think they're so interesting. So, what kinds of clients do you have the most? Are they kids? Are they adults? Are they professionals?
It's actually all adults. I've worked with one kid so far, and actually she did phenomenally. I was so proud of her. And I actually took an extra course to learn how to work with young adults and children. And I was very, very impressed with her. But mostly adults who basically they own their own horses, or they've been taking lessons for years and they just want to feel like they can enjoy and not have that extra anxiety when it comes to riding. Like a lot of them will make up excuses, like they'll just go and hang out with their horse, which is totally cool. I love that too. But if they truly do have that desire to ride, they make excuses like, oh, the weather isn't quite right, or I just don't really have enough time. And they'll find all those ways around dancing around, really stepping into their joy. And a lot of these clients are kind of programmed to give so much and do so much for other people that they forget to fill their own cups. And I'm always emphasizing, fill your own cup with joy first, and then it can spread out even more to others.
Absolutely. I think Marissa does a little video about that where she's like, I have a cup and then I'm filling someone else's cup and then I'm filling this cup. And then now my cup is empty and I can't fill anymore. So if I don't have anything in my cup, I can't give anything. So somebody has to pour into my cup so that I can give to others. And it's a cycle. So I love that you say that and how it applies in your practice with your riders too. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, and I make note of it for myself too. I'm very,
Mhm.
very adamant about ultra self-care for myself, especially as
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
working with all these different sessions. So yeah, I make sure I go out and hang out. I have a almost 17-year-old pony and almost 26-year-old thoroughbred. And I go out and hang out with them and they fill my cup up completely. And they're just amazing. And
Mm.
just, every time you just go close to their muzzle and smell, it's like intoxicating. It's aromatherapy. Yeah.
Yeah. Horse people are really, they love that horsey smell. When
Yeah.
my daughter was young, we had horses and she would come home, and she loved to ride bareback because she liked the feeling of being, in direct contact with the
Yes.
horse and having, really ultimate control with her legs and everything on the horse. Of course, they sweat. And then she would come home and her jeans would be just ingrained with mud and grit and sweat and then she would come in and flop down on the couch and I'm like, no.
Yes, horse girl.
Don't get on my couch with your horsey pants. And she was like, why? It smells good, Mom. I was like, okay, but I don't want my living room to smell like a barn, okay? No, like it's fine if you want your bedroom to smell like a barn. I don't want the living room to smell like a barn. But she was,
That's good to
she
set
really,
boundaries. Yeah.
yeah, she really believed that it smelled amazing and she loved the smell. And I think if you
Yeah.
could have bottled it, she would have dabbed it behind her ears and gone to school in the morning. I don't know. She
Totally. Yeah.
probably did.
I tell people a little secret. If I go to get on a plane, I'll scratch my ponies as much as possible so I can have that smell when I get on the plane.
Oh, I love that. It gives you a sense of grounding then, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah. And then I just feel like they're still with me for a little bit longer, if I'm going
Hmm.
away for a little while. So
Yeah,
it's
I would
nice.
I would just take my seatmate with me.
Oh, I love it. That's perfect.
If I could take her in my pocket, I would. She's too big. Yeah, it's amazing how animals impact our lives. And I love that you're using RTT and you don't just work with the people too. You're using your skills with the animals, right? So tell me more
Exactly.
about that.
So I work with, well, first, obviously, the RTT session is going to help the human, which then obviously helps the horse by default. But I also do remote lessons where the clients will get on Zoom with me and they have a tripod set up so they can either have it stationary where the phone is just looking at a certain area. They wear a little clip on speaker and then it's like I'm right next to them in the arena. We also have what's called the Pivo pod and it rotates and I can actually access it from my computer and move it around. So I
Hmm.
have a couple in Scotland that I work with every Tuesday morning and I'm able to move it around. One horse is a lot quicker than the other, and so I can negotiate zooming in and out and moving it around,
Wow.
and just giving them insights. And I remind them, your horse is the best teacher, and I tell them that. And so we have to always come back to what's best for the horse. What is the horse saying to them? So I'm pretty much the guide, the interpreter, and the encourager. So
Hmm.
I'm not going to say, oh, you have to do this just like this. I'll say, why don't you try this and experiment with that? Does that feel good to you? Does that feel good to your horse? And then you just make sure you get all green lights. And I
Right.
teach people how to step into their power by doing muscle testing, by learning about, yes, this feels true to me. No, this feels false. So you get into that inner body wisdom, tap into that. Once that feels really accurate and you practice it a lot, then you can apply it to your riding. So you can literally say to yourself out loud, I feel ready to trot now. And if your body says yes, then you ask your horse, are you ready to trot? So you're not demanding, you're literally asking and receiving information and getting super patient. For a lot of riders, that's a
Hard.
whole different world from what we started out at. When I was a kid, I was taught you just tell the horse, you do this. And it was very focused riding, competitive riding, of course. but also an old school way of like you're, commanding the horse, you're demanding them of certain things. And I've totally done a 180, and it's been a really interesting unraveling for myself and for a lot of clients I work with. And that's been a new kind of movement in the horse world, which I'm really, really happy to be seeing now.
I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I see the same kinds of things with, dog training and other areas with animals. It's a very different attitude toward, when your dog does something bad, you don't go over and whack it with a newspaper. You redirect, you figure out what it is causing the dog to do the thing. And, so it's really interesting. And I think you said you did some kind of energy work with horses.
Yeah, so I also became certified all during the COVID time. I'm like, what else can I learn? Because I'm like insatiable learner, and I want to do as much as I can to help people. So I became a level 1 certified equestrian Tai Chi instructor. So basically, when you start to do these movements, you do them on the ground first. You're basically becoming really aware of your energy field, and then you're balancing it. So when you can do that, then your horse can go, oh, there's my human. You're not scattered, you're not, all over the place with your energy and your thoughts in your body. And so you do these movements to help get yourself centered and connected to your source energy. And then from there, you can then apply it to when you're actually sitting on the horse. As long as you feel safe, you can either have someone hold the horse, or you have them in front of a fence, or if you feel comfortable, you can drop your reins if you trust your horse and just do some of these movements. And it's not very long, it's maybe a few minutes at a time. And you really start to see a flow happen with the horse and rider, because then your energy fields are basically connecting, and it's almost like they become in harmony in a dance. So you're synchronizing your energy fields together, and it's just the most beautiful thing to watch when it just starts to flow. And you can,
what is the horse doing while the person's doing the Tai Chi? They're just
the horse really has different reactions. Oftentimes they'll do a lot of releasing. So they'll do a big horse sigh, like that, or you'll see them kind of start to lick and chew or do some big yawns. Some of them just kind of turn their heads and look and like, what are you doing? Like, especially if they're not used to it.
Yeah. You're a weird person. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. But then sometimes there were moments where my pony would bring me into the middle and halt and be like, you need to do your Tai Chi right now. You need to get your energy right. So he was very clear. Yeah. So it's amazing. Horses are just like people. They're so different in their personalities. So you just want to honor what feels best in the moment. But if you start to just do little things like that and experiment, like I said, and then it just opens up all these different possibilities. So I love to play with that. We'll do it in the middle of a lesson, like say like something, we just need a reset. I'm like, you know what, just halt in the middle. Let's do a few of our moves, breathe some more. And then the horse is like, oh, good. That's just what we needed. And then they have the rest of the lesson so much better.
So when you work with a new client, do they come to you specifically for the RTT, or is this something that you suggest to them because you're working with them as a riding coach, or how does that come about?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of clients come to me specifically just for building confidence. So some of them will want to have just regular riding lessons, and some of them will want to dive into my course. I have a course called Brave in the Saddle. It's a 12-week program. So they'll do that. And then they'll say, you know what, I think I need something more specific. And then I'm like, okay, then you should jump into the RTT session.
So is the course like a module-based self-guided?
It is, exactly. And we do have a Facebook group attached to it. So, and then people can always email me with questions. And then I do at the very end, I'll do feedback on videos as well. So they can jump into that. I also have a monthly group that people are in, and a lot of them come to me. I think I've done like 80% of those members have done RTT sessions with me. So a lot of them came to me originally for lessons, and it wasn't later that I became certified as the hypnotherapist that they decided to then jump in and learn more about how they can get that extra edge to feel better. And boy, it worked. And one client came to me for confidence for riding, and it helped her autoimmune issues big time. So that was huge. I was really proud of her. And so now she feels better physically and emotionally and mentally. So that was really cool to see.
So in a sense, you do some similar things because I work with people in relationships, and you're working with relationships too, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
the amazing thing is, even though clients think that they're having anxiety because of like a specific fall, many times it's because they feel we discover that something happened in their childhood or even in the womb where there was this overlaying sense of anxiety from the mother, or
Mm,
just something that happened to them as a kid that they associated with not being able to express themselves freely or not being able to tap into joy or not thinking they're good enough. That's a big one. That's a
right.
big one. So if they don't think they're good
Right.
enough, then they don't think they're good enough for their horse. And then it translates into like making excuses not to ride. Well, I'm just not good enough for my horse.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Isn't it interesting how that core belief really affects so many areas of a person's life?
definitely.
Can be anything from, personal relationships to sports to job performance to, financial wealth, anything. It kind of spreads across all areas of a person's life, and it can limit you in every single area of your life.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know what are some of your favorite transformation stories if you wanted to share from some of your clients.
I mean, oh gosh, my clients are, when they come to me with narcissistic abuse issues, some of them come for other issues, and they resonate with me because of my story and what I talk about, what I work with, and they will always tell me, well, my mom was this, or I had a spouse that was that, and they were abusive, whatever. But they're not coming for any of that. They're coming for this other presenting issue. And, it's never the issue that's the problem. And it's always something from the past. And it always ties back to that abusive mom or that abusive ex-husband or that abusive boyfriend in high school or, whatever. So I often have people come in and they come in and it's for some simple little thing. Maybe they're struggling with, I had somebody come with for tinnitus, which is, the ear ringing. And what it turned out to be was a domineering mother.
Hmm.
And this person's spouse was also somewhat, domineering. And the client was very passive and just, had no boundaries and allowed people to talk to them however, and just took it and took it and took it. So it was, I think, the client's way of somehow shutting some of that noise out from all of that. And it was like, so now I don't have to hear them telling me I'm lazy or I'm, not accomplishing things or whatever. And once this was realized by the client, then it was this big light bulb, right? And that was my first client I ever worked with that had some kind of physical, ailment like that.
Yeah.
And I was somewhat, as the therapist, being my first time, skeptical this was going to actually help. But when we realized that it was an emotional thing that was leading to it, in very short order, the tinnitus just stopped. It went away completely.
Oh, I got chills. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, and I've done the same with myself. I've gotten rid of hypothyroidism. I've gotten rid of asthma.
Gorgeous.
So it's just identifying those root causes. And of
That's
course,
interesting. I had hypothyroidism as well, and I did RTT on myself and also was able to heal it. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I took thyroid meds for 30 years, and in
Wow.
the course of a couple of months, it just went away.
Wow.
And when I went back for my checkup with the doctor, because every 6 months you have to go get your blood checked for thyroid. And so they write you a new prescription. And she said, where are we with meds? And I said, I don't need any. And she said, she's looking through the chart and she said, well, it's been almost a year since we refilled. How are you still have medicine? And I said, well, I'm not taking it anymore.
Yeah.
And she got very alarmed, like, we can't just stop taking it without talking to me. And I said, but I didn't have any of the symptoms anymore. And I gradually backed off of it to see what would happen. I didn't even get into the whole hypnosis thing with her because she would have looked at me like I was, crazy. And she said, well, let's run the labs and see what comes up. And then I'm going to, and she wrote me a script anyway, because I'm such an idiot, obviously I would need it. And then she called me later that day and she said, I don't even understand this, because we don't reverse hypothyroidism. It doesn't go away. This is a lifelong affliction, but yet you have absolutely no sign of it in your blood work. And this doesn't make any sense to me. And at that point, I told her what I had done, and she kind of laughed in an uncomfortable, like, oh my God, you're crazy. But then we had a nice conversation about it. And she then started kind of getting out of her own way and asking more direct questions about the therapy I was referring to and what I was doing. And then she was like, I'm going to read up on this. This is very interesting. So
Yes.
I found that to be super, super interesting, but then, as far as like clients go, I have women come to me so completely broken that they can't even get out of bed in the morning, and the overarching theme everybody comes with is I'm stuck, and so they're ruminating, they're dissociating, they're just completely stuck in this deep depression, and they have panic attacks and all of the stuff, nightmares, it's all the signs of complex PTSD, which comes about from long-term abuse. And, so they have limited resources. They're not able to function. They can barely do the dishes and get dressed every day. And by the time we finish working together, I have one client, like, she's gotten a new job. She's now engaged to somebody in a healthy relationship for the first time in her life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's
Beautiful.
supporting herself. She went back to school. She had the confidence to take on all of these things and to realize that she actually deserved it, and to set the intention that she wanted these things, to visualize what that life would feel like, look like, be like. And then she set forth and did it, back to that manifesting, Yeah.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And the clients that I've had similar to that, pretty much almost all of them then end the relationship they're in and move on. And I watch it and I'm like, wow, this is a huge catalyst. And I'm so proud of them. So I'm curious, do most of your clients come while they're still in those relationships, or is it after, or is it a mix?
I don't really work with them while they're still actively in the relationship.
Okay.
The earliest time that I come in is if they're trauma bonded with their abuser and they can't seem to break free.
Okay.
And they're really trying, or maybe they've just left or kicked him out, and they're struggling with that trauma bond and the urge to go back to the relationship, and they don't want to, but yet they want to. And so that would be the earliest time I would get involved. Reason being, if they're still actively, living with their abuser and the abuse is ongoing, most of it is, of course, emotional, mental abuse, the manipulation, the gaslighting, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Then the victim has a very difficult time of taking in those changes that we do in the work, and it gets undone by the abuse over and over again. So it's really like spinning your wheels.
Right.
We need to have a solid intention to separate from this relationship at the very least, and be in the process of doing that, or figuring out how to do that, in order to make this really effective. So if somebody is still in a relationship with their abuser, the only thing I can really fully work with is to help them, more value themselves, to prioritize themselves, to work on self-love, self-worth, prioritizing their own needs and understanding what boundaries are. And a lot of these things we do in coaching as well as in the RTT chair. So in that way, I can build them up enough so that they have the courage to break free. But typically they have already left their abuser, whether it be a partner, a friend, a sibling, a parent. And it's trickier. It's so much trickier in a lot of cases when they're actually, their primary abuser is their mother, their father, their sister, or, the brother, whatever. It's harder to walk away from your own family And it's funny because it is, but it isn't. I think because societal pressure says, blood is thicker than water and all of these things that really do a number on us. So we stay with toxic family members who abuse us over and over and over again. And we won't cut them off no matter what, because they're our mother or whatever. So that's tricky to navigate. Usually it's a romantic partner, husband, wife, whatever, but yeah. So that's what I do.
It's such a blessing that you do that. I'm really glad that you're
Well,
focusing on that to
yeah, I
help.
think it's really necessary work. Yeah, I mean, I was that, that was my experience, and that's how I came into this. So I knew this life and I walked that line, and I was beyond trauma bonded, and I couldn't even begin to see myself as a separate person. Not really. I mean, I kind of did, but only in some areas, and the more I would begin to separate from him and as a different individual, the more he would punish and push me. And then I would just go back because I was being punished. Yeah.
What a gorgeous shift that you made to now be able to help others. I really feel like a lot of times, that's why I work with the horse riders, because I've had that anxiety myself. So when you've had that firsthand experience, unfortunate as it was, it also helps you empathize even more.
It does. And I think especially with narcissistic abuse, if somebody hasn't experienced it, they don't get it. And it's really difficult to fully understand somebody's perspective, from the outside. I mean, all of these people that I work with, they've heard from their family friends who are, well, just leave. Why don't you leave if it's so bad? But that's also really blaming the victim. And, then they don't understand trauma bond. They don't understand that she can't leave. She can't see herself separate. I mean, I truly believed if I was not the wife of this, person, I call him person loosely. I think he's more of a monster, but, if I wasn't his wife, then who was I? I was obviously nobody. And, what I believed in that moment was, well, if he doesn't want me and he throws me aside like garbage, then I must be just that. And there is no value to my life. And that was really where I was at with it. And that's what I experience with my clients as well. They feel like they just have no value, no worth to anybody if this person treats them this way. And yeah.
And do you find it takes at least 3 sessions to find their way back?
At least, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just sort of depends on, what's the background situation. For me, I had a massive shift in one session when I did this initially. It didn't fix everything, obviously, and I've done a ton of work on that since, but it was enough to break the trauma bond. And it isn't always that quick for everybody, but it happened that way for me. And also, like you said, it depends on the client and how engaged they are with the process and how trusting they are with the process. If somebody is skeptical, then it's going to take longer. If they say things like, I'm not hypnotizable, or I'm not very imaginative, or I can't visualize, then you've got some extra work to do to help them relax and set them up for that success.
Yeah, I even created a come back to your calm, a self-hypnosis that I just give to them. So you listen to that for a while, get used to
I love that.
getting into that state and hearing my voice. And so they start to feel comfortable before the session begins. So
yeah, I've done that with a few people as well, where I give them some kind of a pre-recording to listen to for a few days to just help them. Sometimes it's just their own nerves and not knowing what they're going to experience, and they're a little afraid and reticent to enter into this and just relax. And they have to feel comfortable with you as the therapist, because they're going to tell you some pretty intimate stuff, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. And I've all from the very beginning, even as a student doing practice sessions, it's always surprised me that you could be doing the most basic, simple, little innocuous nail biting session, and the next thing you know, you're being told how they were molested or raped or, some horrible thing that befell them as a child. And
Yeah.
this is somehow has something to do with this nail biting. And so it is our job in that session to help the client make those connections and to figure out how this connects to that, as that thing we call left hand, right hand. In your
Exactly.
left hand are pictures of you in these past events, and then in the right hand is you in the present. And if these are connected with a string, what is that connection? How are they related? And we help guide that client to discover that connection on their own, so nobody's spoon feeding them, right? And I'm always really careful not to. Some people, you almost have to whack them over the head with a baseball bat to get them to see it. You're like, no, dummy, it's you just said it. But
Yeah.
I try really hard to get them to find it. And then from the hypnotherapy end of it, we're disconnecting, detaching acts or behaviors from beliefs, right? From emotions.
Exactly.
So
And
you
when they do
separate it.
come up with the insights on their own, gosh, it's a gorgeous feeling,
It
like
is.
like,
It
yes, you're
is.
getting it. And then the light bulbs, and they literally look lighter in their energy once it clicks in.
Mhm. Yeah. And I love when, even if they don't really have that big light bulb in the session, they'll come back to you in a follow-up and go, I was watching TV the other night and this thought occurred to me, and I think I understand this now. So it's,
Okay.
one of those ways that
Yeah.
you make these changes, and it's kind of gradual. And it's maybe in a moment when you're also maybe in a slightly meditative state, or a hypnotic state, because you're just sitting there zoning out watching TV or scrolling on your phone on Facebook, as we do. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden this like ding, and
Yes.
I love it when they share that with me. And I'm like, yes, yes, that's amazing.
Yeah, and just going through the process of one session really opens up to allow yourself to analyze more situations that happened to you when you're younger. And you're like, oh, I see that now. And then you can just give your younger self some love and listen, we're safe now. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We can move forward.
Yeah, another therapist I talked to said she does an in-depth intake and a little coaching up front before they do the RTT. And she said, I like to think of it as I'm jangling the keys and unlocking all the doors. And then when we get into the RTT session, now we can get into the rooms because the doors
Oh,
have been
wow.
unlocked. And I love
I
that
love that.
metaphor. I think that's so, so correct, because you're rattling the keys, you're unlocking all the doors, like throw the doors open. And then when you go into those sessions, they can just flow in and walk into the rooms. Of course, a lot of people that I deal with have been highly traumatized. And
Yeah.
sometimes we don't walk in the door. We just stand near the door and
Yeah.
maybe we peek through our fingers. Um, just depends on what the thing is. Sometimes they just can't face it. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You deal with what emerges, and you tell them, you share whatever you feel comfortable with,
Mhm.
because they're in control of the session. Ultimately, we're just the guides.
Yeah. So with trauma, we get close enough to feel the heat from the fire, but we don't step into it all the time. If they feel ready, then we dive in. If they don't, as long as we can feel the heat, that's all we need. And then from there we can start, teasing out the beliefs and the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts and all of the stuff.
That's so true, because you just really need to get down to what the feelings and beliefs were, and then decide you don't need them anymore.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're just trying to figure it out. What in that moment when this horrible thing happened to you, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? And what did that then cause you to believe about yourself? And that's
Yeah.
really all you need to do on a subconscious level, is to recognize, oh, so I believed this. I'm not good enough. My needs don't matter. I'm a weirdo. I don't belong. I don't fit. Whatever the thing is. And
Yeah, I
once you
can share with
recognize,
you one of my first sessions with during school. I had a client. I mean, I had another student therapist helping me with the shakiness I used to have before going into like a podcast or a live video or even just a Zoom meeting. I would
Mm.
literally shake. My legs would shake, my mouth would sometimes shake. And I used to play French horn. And so when I do a solo, it would be really hard to get my embouchure in order to like get the notes out because I'd be so nervous because they were going to be highlighting me. And would you believe that it was when I was 5 years old, my parents took me to the show Little Shop of Horrors. And in that show, there's a big alien plant that eats people.
Oh, wow.
So my little 5-year-old mind started running the old program that anytime you're in the spotlight, you might get eaten by monsters. So my whole body would go into shake mode, like, uh-oh, I'm going to be highlighted. Danger, Will Robinson,
Monsters are going to eat me.
So I literally started laughing in the session, and the student's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, this is not what I expected, but it makes so much sense now.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I understood it and I could let it go, I was like, oh, I'm totally fine now. I have no more shakes. Yeah.
And it's what, we're taught to in school is that the feeling in the body of anxiety is exactly the same as excitement.
Yes.
And when you flip the label on that, so when you feel that jitteriness and you go, I'm not anxious, I'm excited for this, I'm looking forward to this is anticipation. And when you change that label, it changes the way you relate to it. It's almost like if you plunge your hand into a bowl of ice and you hold it there, if you think about it, it's not cold, it's hot, and then all of a sudden you actually feel that it's burning, but yet your hand is in ice. It's the same kind of idea. So it's the same physical feeling or sensation that comes from an emotion or a thought. And if you relabel it something else, it's not anxiety. I'm excited. I'm so excited.
Exactly. And that's actually really specifically important for riders. So if they start to get anxious, you could say, I'm excited for this, and my body is getting me ready to have more focus so that way I can be completely in sync and be there for my horse completely.
Yeah.
So you're not spacing out.
That's all, it's all amazing.
Yeah. Our bodies are so cool.
They are. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. This has been a really fun chat. So I'm going to thank you for participating today. And thank you for having a wonderful conversation. And I wish you so well in the future in your business.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for having me. And same for you. This is wonderful that you're doing this.
Wonderful. All right, Beth, it's been great. And I'll talk to you again.
All right. Thanks. Take care.